Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. I'm your host, Jason Miles, here for a extremely special, for me, extremely early episode of This is Revolution podcast. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us on this. I don't even know what kind of day it is because it's still night here. Sun's not up. If you're a returning listener, subscriber, or one of the very valued patrons that will join us for the after watch party, what up? Today we are capping off another crazy week of shows at TIR. We did three shows, including the Champagne Room yesterday. We spoke with Daniel Tutt to talk marks on censorship on Tuesday. We attempted to discuss why buying a sports team or starting a sports league is a more profitable venture than anything else when we weren't getting interrupted by Manosphere Miles. That guy's a douche. And like I said yesterday, we discussed America's exploding debt bomb with Ted Reese, and then follow that up later in the evening with a conversation on how we all got comfortable with selling out with Emily Topping, who then came back and joined us in the Champagne Room for some TIR insanity. She got baptized in the nonsense, in the habitual line stepping that is the Champagne Room. Just reciting all that is tiring. That being said, all these shows are available for you to check out. If you want to view them on YouTube, just go to the TIR main show live stream playlist and check it out. Leave a comment. I know some of you are thinking that it's strange to see me here so early on a Friday morning. Well, it is morning for me. As I speak right now, because those people are going to be listening to this later, it is 5 a.m. Pacific time here in Baja. But I'll be driving up north to see my family on Saturday. And our guest is 14 hours ahead of me in Thailand. Since it's Star Wars month, why not have Dr. Harris on to discuss this George Lucas classic? Now, immediately following this episode, we're going to the watch party where we will watch A New Hope. We recently watched Rogue One, so what better way to follow that up than with the movie that started it all, the OG Star Wars? If you want to join us for this movie night watch party, or movie day watch party, maybe it's night or something, I don't know. Just going to keep calling it. Why get bogged down by the details? And you want to make sure we can stay on the air and do this insanity, become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. You can have access to champagne rooms, past and present. Join us for these movie night watch parties and more. The big difference between being a patron and signing up for YouTube, which I found out was cheaper than I thought. It's like $1.99 to sign up to be a paid YouTube subscriber. If you are a paid YouTube subscriber, apparently you get access to the champagne rooms as well. But I can't upload the replays. So you have to become a patron if you want to watch the replays. And what it is, we get to record these watch parties and you can see them if you miss them. Now, before we watch Star Wars, let's talk a little bit more about its cultural significance. 48 years ago, George Lucas took us to a time long ago and to a land far, far away. But sadly, that distant galaxy is looking more and more like a frightening reflection of our current moment. When I first watched Star Wars, like many kids my age, it was on television with my very excited father. Spaceships, outer space dogfights, Imperial battle stations, aliens, laser swords. I was hooked from the very first viewing. The story of a scrappy group of rebels fighting against the technologically advanced space fascist imperial regime. It shouldn't feel like a fairy tale. It should be a reminder. Through collective action, we can fight back against the evil empire. In Los Angeles, Trump is raging war on brown people. Documentation doesn't matter. Instilling fear is the objective. And sadly, it's working. Militarized ICE agents, masked and armored, patrolling neighborhoods. It's not hard to see the resemblance to Stormtroopers searching escape pods for rebel survivors. Only this time, Han Solo isn't there to fly us to safety. Maybe what we're witnessing is more like Rogue One, where the resistance knows the odds are against them, but they fight anyway. Not because they know they'll win, but because they understand the power of hope. The infectiousness of it, maybe. A New Hope shouldn't be just a nostalgic title. It should be a roadmap, a way for us to think about what collective struggle really looks like against a technologically superior empire. Let's not forget, George Lucas didn't write this as a fantasy. He modeled the rebels on the Viet Cong and the Empire. And that was us, the United States. Star Wars is a reminder that authoritarianism doesn't have to win, that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and that the people, united, will never be defeated. To talk about this with me is the author of a very good book. Wherever you're watching this show or listening to it later, there should be a link in the description. The book is called Welcome to the Rebellion. Please welcome to the TIR Rebellion, Dr. Michael Harris.
Hi, Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, considering that it's a little early for me.
I do appreciate you getting up so damn early just for me. I appreciate that.
That alarm went off at 3:30 a.m. and I was like,
Damn.
There's a little morning routine that I have to do, and if I don't do it, I can't do the show. So it's my AOO. What do you call it? ODD, ODB, OCC, whatever they call the obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay.
I can't think.
So what's the routine, or is it not safe for work?
I have to do a certain amount of exercises before the show, and I have to shower before the show. I can't do the show unshowered.
Sure. Okay. I appreciate it.
Be a fucking professional. Let's start with the title of your book, Welcome to Rebellion. What does rebellion mean in the context of the Star Wars universe, and how does it map onto real world resistance movements, especially now?
I think what the first film in particular shows, it's full of those moments where people have to make a decision. And the theme running through it, so many of the scenes are really about one person saying to another person, no, this is it. This is really happening. The emergency is here, or the point where we need to stand up is here. So that's the first thing I think it's about, is recognizing the depth of the emergency or the crisis that you're in. Hopefully we'll talk a bit more about that, because I don't think we always do that. I'm certain we don't always do that. So that's the jumping off point of the rebellion, is realizing in a way you don't have any choice.
Are you
you're in it, and you can try to choose not to be, but you are.
Have you been seeing some of the images of Los Angeles at all in the news in Thailand?
Yeah. And what was in that was the most shocking thing this week with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yeah.
Was the increased spending for ICE, which means that ICE is now going to be the biggest, not only the biggest law enforcement agency, but bigger than all the funding for all of the other American law enforcement agencies. There's your shock troops.
It really does resemble. It really did resemble Stormtroopers. I mean, again, we were just watching Rogue One, and when I was writing the intro to this show, I had just watched a news thing on what's going on in LA, and there's different images you're seeing. I don't know if you saw the ICE troops go through the park. There was a park in Los Angeles. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, it's a park. There's nothing going on. People are doing things that they usually do at park, exercising, just enjoying the beauty of a public park. And to have these masked agents come through trying to sweep people. The mayor is there trying to call ICE. Trump is Palpatine in a way that we've never seen a president be Palpatine in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas was inspired. Nixon was Palpatine, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
I mean, in original, I'm saying, but yeah, and well, or is Stephen Miller really who's Stephen Miller? Darth Vader, I guess, in that analogy. Yeah.
Oh, young Darth Vader when he's still not quite the man, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, the the apprentice in training, or the power behind the throne. Yeah, yeah. It's frightening, but that's part of realizing you're in an emergency. It's not something that's coming. It's here. So it's recognizing that revolutionary moment, I suppose you could say. I think runs through the first film in particular, well, A New Hope. Yeah.
Um, George Lucas was very open about the anti-imperialist inspiration for Star Wars. Sorry. Why do you think so many viewers still consume this saga as an apolitical fantasy?
I surely that's getting more and more difficult, isn't it? I mean, I don't keep up with the fandom or anything like that, but after things like Rogue One and Andor, the latest final series of Andor, I mean, is it at all credible to say keep politics out of my Star Wars? I reread the script for A New Hope the other day, and he actually uses the word fascism in it. I was quite surprised. I hadn't noted that, but when he's describing the stormtroopers, he says in their fascist uniforms. I was like, well, okay, So if you don't want to see it, you don't want to see it, but it's unavoidable.
Well, to give you an idea of how insane this is, I just realized that YouTube has pulled this show down right now because we violated their policy. And you want to know how we violated their policy?
Yeah.
They said our intro video that we've been playing for the last 5 years. This is the second time in a week, in 2 weeks, that we violated YouTube policy. The first time we did a show about the military and AI, and now we're talking about Star Wars. So all
Yeah.
the shows that I did yesterday, and I played the same intro, it was fine. But today you talk about Star Wars as reality, as grand, the importance of grand narratives for the left, and all of a sudden the show gets pulled. It's insane. It makes you think that this message, as silly as it may seem, because there's so many people that hate Star Wars. There's nothing I hate more than someone's like, I've never seen them. It's like, well, they didn't pull the show about Star Trek.
Yeah. I mean, it was a movie designed for kids.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed for kids, and I saw it as a kid. It came to the UK in 1978. That was in the days when films would turn up like 6 months later or a year later. So we didn't have the summer of '77, but it was amazing. It was like a defining thing to see as a kid, and it was frightening as well, but in the way that good kids movies can be terrifying. But there's people being murdered and burnt alive and strangled, and there's this scary 7-foot guy in a black cloak, and terrifying, but in a great way. Yeah.
It is interesting because the first movie, I think, maybe because it's 1977 and 1977 PG is a whole different world of what's acceptable for children. But you open your book, and I think it's the preface of the book. You talk about the deleted scene in Star Wars and how that deleted scene is kind of a powerful moment to really show how scrappy these rebels are, and it was deleted for pacing purposes. And I've seen the deleted scene multiple times. I believe the Big's Dark Slider actually has a figure now, a
Right.
legitimate
Sure.
figure now.
Sure.
But that scene really shows what's brewing with this rebellion. Can you talk a little bit about that deleted scene?
Yeah. So if people haven't seen it, you can see it on YouTube. It One of the things it does, it changes Luke from being a kind of archetypal hero's journey kind of character to being more politicized from the beginning of the movie. So basically, he's talking to Biggs, and Biggs has been off at the Imperial Academy, which is the kind of training that later join the Empire. And Biggs has heard rumors. He knows someone who might have a contact for the Rebel Alliance, the kind of nascent Rebel Alliance. And Luke leaps up and down. Is like the Alliance. You know, we always talked about finding a way to find the Alliance. So it suggests a kind of more politicized Luke and a more politicized galaxy, actually, who know that the Empire is rotten and corrupt and all that stuff, and know that they've already made their decision. So it does kind of change the film in quite a way. I think it improves it. I understand why they cut it. It was going to be cut in with the Star Destroyer, the big famous opening with the Star Destroyer chasing down the Rebel cruiser. But they cut it because it just didn't kind of fit very well. But it does suggest a more political Star Wars. So that's why I start the book talking about that scene, because it's about how people are maybe more politicized than you think they are, particularly from a kind of left perspective. You assume that people aren't politicized when in ways they might be that could mean opportunities for organizing.
In Rogue One, we see a darker, grittier version of the rebellion. What lessons can we take from that story about organizing under hopeless conditions?
I think Star Wars has been really changed by Rogue One and now Andor, right? Because I mean, I was never like a super fan, but it's really made me uninterested in the kind of squabbles of this Skywalker royal family. You know, I'm much more interested in these people and kind of hopeless causes and trying to organize and finding opportunities to kind of organize people and the tactics they're talking about and when is the right time to move and how is the Empire going to react and so on. So I don't think that's an answer to your question, but I think that's a much more interesting Star Wars and actually goes back to the original. I mean, I was always kind of less interested in the whole Skywalker nonsense, really, and of course that fell apart with the last Disney movie, which where was that going, and it didn't really have a satisfactory conclusion. But we've got Rogue One, we've got Andor, and all the stories that can fly off from that, which is great.
I haven't seen Andor. Actually, the reason why we started Star Wars Month. Yeah, I stopped all the Disney streaming stuff. I don't really have a lot of streaming services. I have enough cheap stuff where we can watch cheap movies here.
Yeah,
YouTube has a ton of movies for free that I rather enjoy. But the little bit that I've seen of Andor, I really enjoy. There's actually some animated stuff that I think they do really well. That's a little more fun for me because I can just go back to being a kid. And I understand that the sequels were kind of these vehicles to sell toys. And I don't know if they resonated with the young people the way the originals did. But did you see a failure in the messaging with the sequels that come out in the Disney ones?
I think there was I mean, they'd spent whatever it was to buy Star Wars. Was it 5 or 6 billion?
Yeah, some ridiculous number.
And which is a good investment in terms of all the merchandising and spin-offs, no doubt. But on reflection, I think they just should have kind of started anew. I think there was something really interesting in the idea of a kind of resurgent First Order. And I think it was J.J. Abrams said, the idea was kind of inspired by the Nazis after the Second World War, kind of going to Argentina and regrouping or something. Okay, that's an interesting starting point. I think the the desire to have a kind of bridge between the original trilogy and the sequels by having Luke, Han, and Leia was probably a mistake. They should, just start the story again. I mean, I would have gone to see it anyway out of interest. So it felt a bit like kind of Gen X fan service to have them in there. I didn't need them in there. I'd had my Star Wars. I'd had my original trilogy. Fine, let's start a new story for a new generation of people. I mean, this is what I realized when I was working on the book. I'd never been a fan of the prequel movies, and they have their limitations. But actually, talking to younger people, I realized that was their Star Wars, and they loved it. They loved it, and all the things I would have been critical of, and I think the characterization was less interesting, and all the CGI shit all over the place, and all of that. That made it not feel authentic to me. They loved all that stuff. It was a new Star Wars for them, and the original trilogy was just this kind of old stuff that they couldn't really relate to. So fine, start again. Renew it. I think that was the mistake they made with the Disney sequels, was to try to carry some old stuff along, and there was so much repetition of ideas. There's a new Death Star again, so that's the third Death Star we've had, and all this kind of bullshit. Start again. I think there would have been what I would have done, not a screenwriter, but what I would have done is the frame of the three stories being, okay, we've got this new republic, the Empire's gone, and it would have been about terrorism, and it would have been about how you react, how governments react to terrorism. So you'd have had this first order who were kind of terrorists, or are they terrorists? Are they freedom fighters, and so on? And how easy it is in responding to that to slip into authoritarianism. So it would have been more of a kind of war on terror type thing. I think that would have been more interesting. But that's all with the benefit of hindsight, isn't it?
Does Star Wars lose a little something? Like right now, we're kind of in this moment where, for example, like this show's been pulled down because of violating a standard that doesn't make sense. Basically, because there's an image of a person holding a gun.
Right.
That's not a war situation. There's definitely channels that show videos of old wars. There's movies on here that show people shooting people. It's not a problem. But for some reason,
well, your intro reminds. It's like the beginning of an Oliver Stone movie.
Yeah,
it's like the beginning of You just need Martin Sheen to do you a nice voiceover, and you're good. I mean, it's all.
But like that's do you think people are more scared to say stuff now because everything is controlled by corporations and not a powerful fascistic empire?
With the average person, I don't know. I mean, you're not scared to say things, are you?
No, I'm getting frustrated, but I'm not scared.
I don't. I live on the other side of the world, so I don't know what the day-to-day feeling in the US is like. So I can't speak to that. I imagine there's fear, and it's fear by design, isn't it? That's what they want.
Well, the surveillance is what's crazy to me.
Oh, yeah.
People that can't wait to record other people, and everybody wants a Ring camera so they can make sure no one steals the $10 Amazon shit they get sent to their house. That's what's interesting to me. But the fact that such mundane things are constantly being taken down. This isn't the first time I've had social media issues. Facebook erased my entire account like 5 years ago.
Is this all automated? Is that how they do it? It's just AI reading it? Yeah.
They tell you, I've definitely tried to fight this as best I can, but they told me, oh no, a real person reviews it. It's like, you can tell me anything. I can't see the process.
Yeah.
And, you're not very public about it. But I say all that to say, when we watch these movies, it does have this feel of the olden days, so to speak, of the SDS, let's say the Black Panther Party, fighting back against the quote unquote man. First of all,
absolutely, yeah.
I don't
I
see
mean, that's
anyone
what it
that
was.
organized in 2025. Maybe where you are globally, I don't see anyone in the Western world that organized to even attempt to try to fight back at power, because the way that people organize today, which is a lot more digitally opposed to on the ground, like we saw this Democratic Socialist mayoral candidate win a primary, and this victory has been they say it's because of his social media presence and
Yeah, you're talking
videos.
about New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He's fantastic at using social media.
Mm-hmm. But that's a little different than on the ground. And again, as what's happening here with this show, if a social media platform goes, nope, then all those eyeballs that were seeing you are gone.
Yeah, well, we're entirely dependent on these platforms.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
So
The Star Wars, you lose a little something because the way that power shuts you down is a little different.
well, I mean, this goes back to the emergency point, I think, which is what is organizing when you recognize you're in an emergency. And A New Hope is a very simple but effective dramatization of that, right? The Empire has built this Death Star, which is an object designed as an object of terror for good reason, and you realize it's going to strike a deadly blow at an important rebel base. Not the only rebel base, presumably, but it will be a decisive victory for the Empire, and they've just effectively abolished the Galactic Senate. And it's about some characters saying to the other characters, "This is it. We're in it now. You're in it now." And you can try and run and hide, but it's a moment of decision. So, and going back to where we started with the deleted scene and so on, people might not have an extensive theoretical knowledge or whatever, but they know they're in an emergency. They know that, even if they're not consuming a lot of news, or let alone more kind of radical stuff, they know there's an emergency. And Trump and the right, which is something I'd want to talk more about, is an emergency kind of crisis president and regime, in the way that I don't think the left always realizes. So they see a lot of, they think they see a lot of kind of fairly random acts and deceit and corruption and so on, but sometimes I think we miss the understanding of where that comes from, and I can say a bit more about that, if that's of interest.
Yeah, please do.
Well, so what is Trump a reaction to? It's a reaction to some of the things I talk about in the book. Conservative elites, because they are inherently a minority, and their policies and their thinking is about serving a minority, are much more tuned every day to thinking about, how can I win over people by telling a deceitful story? Because they have to, because they're not the mass of people who are going to be exploited, right? So that's why in the book I was talking about the importance of stories, and I think Star Wars is about the importance of stories. And in Star Wars, people are always telling each other stories. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is telling Luke a story about his father, and he was this great man in the Clone Wars or whatever, and trying to get Luke into the rebellion, right? So it's a story about stories. And I think conservatives and MAGA and so on realize that much more than the left, that it's not about putting forward a series of policy proposals. We're going to make this change. We're going to do this for you. It's about, I mean, you've called this grand narratives, but it's really just kind of simple, powerful stories that people can relate to about what is going on. And the right has seized very effectively, and Trump is a genius at doing this story about I am your figurehead in this pitched battle, this terminal battle against globalist elites and radical leftist lunatics. And so I know who the enemy is. These are the people that have fucked up your lives, and your this is the reason your hometown is, you know, has been gutted, because you've been sold out by these evil, corrupt elites, and I'm going to take them on, and they are going to try and martyr me for that. But I'm going to be your retribution, as he said. And you know, who on the left talks with that kind of rhetorical power? We talk about our proposals, you know, universal healthcare and all, you know, all those things, or, you know, building more housing, all important things. But you're not feeding that emotional need that people have, particularly in a state of crisis and emergency. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to your discussion about the debt, the American debt and deficit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a manifestation of that crisis. It's unsustainable, right?
Yeah.
That will, you know, that will collapse. And the environmental crisis and the jobs crisis and the automation of jobs, and now AI, drug epidemics, addiction, loneliness, mental health, all of these things are manifestations of this crisis. And Trump speaks to that in a powerful way, in a, you know, Palpatine-esque way. He says, this is chaos and I'm going to bring order. I'm going to bring order back. People respond to that. A lot of people respond to that.
They responded to it, but are they afraid of what they got? I mean, there's that scene where, again, back to the deleted scene, I think Big says something along the lines of like, well, the Empire was good at first.
Yeah.
But you know, this ain't it. You know, it's gone a bad way. There's apparently,
Yeah, but they
there was
realize that too late. They realize that too late.
yeah.
Jason, that's the point. It was good at first. I liked what he was doing at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupt.
No, bringing the people together, because now we know what that is. There's people that hate the prequels. I think the prequels are wordy and a bit of a slog and too bright. But I think they tell the story of how it happens. And I don't know if people like that. Just like sometimes we don't need background stories for horror movie characters. Like we don't need to know the origin story of Michael Myers. He's just supposed to be evil, right? I do think it's important to know the origin story of where the Empire comes from.
Well, George Lucas's point about that, when he was talking about the prequels, was that the Empire comes from within the Republic. It's not some thing that comes from the outside. It comes from within, because of the weakness and because of centrism, and because people are talking about, well, how should we respond to this? Where's this going? You know, and they don't see the grand plan. So that was his aim. Even if that's, I mean, one of the things you've got to like about George Lucas is he doesn't really care what people want. His view was, this is what I think is important. I'm going to give it to you, whether you like it or not. But as I say, talking to younger people, that is their Star Wars, in a way that the original trilogy was our Star Wars. And around the time of the invasion occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan and the war on terror, and there are lots of references to that and Dick Cheney and so on in the prequels. And so that was, politicizing for some younger people who wanted to see the prequels in that way. They're not so much for me, but it worked for them. So, he's a smart guy in that way.
That's the hard part, I think, for certain people our age to accept that it's not for you. Like, these movies aren't for you. Let it go.
No,
if you want it, and that's because you can get what you want when you want it. I think that's another reason why people get so offended by, like, people like really legitimately offended by the prequels. I'm like, dude, calm down. It's not for you. Go watch it with a younger person, 20 years your junior, and they'll have a whole different outlook on it. Maybe you'll have a different outlook on it. But don't stand here yelling at the cloud.
No, that's right. And that was the problem with the sequels, that they were all kind of nervous and led by marketing, I guess. And, and it was a big gamble for them, but I don't care about that. But if you do get around to seeing Andor, because the second season in particular, that is much more about organizing and these disparate groups and how you bring them together and the sacrifices. I mean, it follows on very nicely from Rogue One and says, even though it leads up directly to Rogue One, it is about some people knowing that they are going to have to sacrifice themselves and coming to terms with that and convincing other people they are going to have to sacrifice themselves to get this rebellion formed, and there is no longer any time, or time is running out for any accommodation within the system. That's what it is really about. It's time to jump. Is Andor in a sentence, basically. Yeah, it's time to go.
Because Andor is supposed to end right where Rogue One begins.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it leads right up to it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's great, if that would be a mega watch party if you did, maybe the last episode of Andor and then straight into Rogue One and then straight into New Hope. That would be a triple header.
That would be a lot.
That would be a lot.
I almost wanted to do a double header when we did Rogue One and just go into Star Wars, because the way Rogue One ends, you just want to watch Star Wars because the Darth Vader scene is so badass.
Yeah. So they pull off the same. Go on.
I don't know if you feel this way. Over the years, because of the mass marketing of Star Wars, Darth Vader softens, and maybe Jedi softens him a bit. The re-releases of the movies with the new scenes that Lucas puts in, I think, softens Darth Vader a bit, because he is a faceless evil, even throughout Jedi, and then he's a bit of a meme. Like, I have a book in my living room. It's Darth Vader and Son, and it's kind of a jokey book about Darth Vader and his kids. He's not, over the years, he's just not scary like he was when I was little. Like, if Darth Vader came on the screen when I was a young person watching Empire or Star Wars, I was terrified.
Yeah, that scene in Empire where they're in was it Bespin,
yes,
Lando, and they open the door and he's sitting at the table. Fucking terrifying. And it's obviously meant to be, and he's just sitting there.
And he knows Han Solo shoots, he blocks the pigs, grabs the gun, and you're like, that's you can't win.
It's the Hannibal Lecter thing, isn't it? It's overexposure.
Yeah.
A figure you only see for a few minutes, it becomes a bit of a parody. But it was fucking terrifying when I saw that at 6 years old in the cinema. He was and there's so much going in, for me in kind of terrifying father figures and authority figures and so on. He really nailed that feeling with that entrance. And then he's strangling one of the guys on the ship,
Yeah, like, oh my God. Yeah, like it's nothing.
And
And for me, I saw Kevin Smith said something years ago when people were complaining about the prequels because people complained about Darth Vader being whiny because you're
Yeah,
watching him as a teenager.
yeah.
And and Kevin Smith said, "Of course, the most terrifying person in the galaxy is going to be a whiny emo kid." How do you think he got there?
Well, but he's also, I mean, this is before the alt-right, of course, but he captures that kind of character quite well. He's an angry, lost kid who's searching for order and is traumatized and so on. So Lucas has never been that great at the dialogue, but the kind of design of characters he's always
Yes.
been very good at. And someone pointed out about the prequels, there is this nice mirroring of the corruption of institutions from the inside and what this kid is going through
Mhm.
and his own corruption, And so in that way, it's very nicely designed. But it wasn't meant to speak to me,
Mhm.
so it's all good.
We live in a time of, kind of getting back to this. We live in a time of mass surveillance, militarized policing, and corporate tech dominance. How should we interpret the Death Star today? What does it represent now?
The way I write about it in the book, which is maybe a bit forced or whatever, it's was as this planet destroying death machine, right?
Mhm.
So I wrote about it more in kind of political economic terms and also environmental terms.
Mhm.
This is this thing, globalized, technocratic capitalism needs to be destroyed or it will destroy you. It's a kind of simple, reading, but that's how I took it as the analogy. You need to recognize this thing needs to be destroyed because it will not stop and it will destroy everything in its path. So that's how I saw the Death Star, and it's also a really great symbol of imperial thinking.
Mhm.
And it's the focus on technology and militarism, the way that comes together in the Death Star. So that's why it's such a brilliant symbol in the movies. It's something it becomes obvious. It should be obvious to all the characters. You cannot bargain or negotiate with this thing. You cannot have a friendlier, more liberal Death Star, right? It will kill. Right? It needs to be destroyed
We really
with
don't see
everything that
people trying to
entails.
we don't see people trying to bargain with the Death Star or the Empire. A little bit in
It's not.
Mandalorian. In Mandalorian, you see a little bit of like people snitching out other people for the Empire, or what's
Yeah,
going to be because I
yeah,
think Mandalorian takes place after Jedi.
yeah. There is no that's interesting. There is no discussion
Mm.
in the original trilogy that you would normally, I think, have in Hollywood stories of one character saying to another, "Well, I don't know. Is life under the Empire really that bad? I mean, we
Mhm.
can." It just assumes, where we're positioned in the story, that this thing needs to be destroyed. So it's very revolutionary, right? We're not kind of sitting around debating this thing. It's like, let's go. Are you
Yeah,
are you
like
ready to go?
we've gotten to this point, so this is where
Yeah,
we are now with it.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
find that interesting because one of the things that we deal with now is it really that bad? Again, I go back to what we're seeing with migration and this kind of war on immigrants. There was an article in I can't remember the news outlet. It wasn't the LA Times, but it was Gazette that some insane number, like around 70% of migrant farm workers aren't showing up to work, even though Trump came out and said, well, I'm not going to raid farms. But they're
yeah,
like, you've raided everywhere else, so we're not going to work. and crops are literally dying because people are terrified of the stormtroopers coming to get them for no good reason. I don't think people understand. There's definitely a large part of Trump's base, the petite bourgeois part of his base, that relies on migrant labor, not just as redundant labor, but also as middle management to deal with the people they can't literally speak to. And they're suffering as well. Will we see a rebellion against this regime that actually won't be filled with with rebels, but maybe more stormtroopers turning on themselves? The bounty hunters versus the Empire.
I mean, that's what always eventually happens with fascist regimes, authoritarian regimes.
Mm.
There's always those battles within, and or again, the second season is quite good on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the if you can get past the first 2 or 3 episodes, because they do them in these kind of 3-episode blocks.
Mm.
The first one, to what you started saying, there is this. It's really slow and it's quite boring, and you think, oh no, this isn't working at all, because there's this kind of imperial audit of this farming planet, and it's quite obvious what the showrunner Tony Gilroy is doing, because they are the Imperials are doing this audit of all these farms, and the migrant workers who should not be there, who haven't got passes to be on this planet, are all kind of running and hiding. It's fairly kind of obvious what he's talking about, even though this was presumably written 2 or 3 years ago. But then later on, it picks up, and there's a. It's really interesting on the bureaucracy of the Empire. So, some of the 2 of the main characters work in the kind of imperial intelligence department, and all the politicking that's going on in there, and all the kind of backstabbing and people fighting for position. And of course, what's also great is you never see the Emperor, you never see Palpatine. He's this distant person. And again, I presume that's based on historical research of people like Hitler. People didn't see Hitler. He was in his mountain hideaway, but they were all trying to anticipate what he would want, which often led them to those who were ambitious in terms of careerism would obviously go further than even he had explicitly said in order to win his favor. Sounds familiar? No?
Yes, just frighteningly too familiar.
Yeah.
How important is it that Star Wars, especially in its newer iterations, shows a diverse group of heroes?
Oh,
And
yeah, I think it's.
I don't mean ethnically diverse. I mean kind of ably diverse as well.
How do you mean ably diverse? What do you mean by that?
When you watch Rogue One, like I said, I haven't seen Andor. That's the most regular people one, maybe, right? There's the blind guy that's not a Jedi. Forrest Whitaker's character has kind of been beaten down by this fight against the Empire. They seem to be reluctant heroes outside of Cassian Andor. Is that his name?
Yeah.
And even the Imperial pilot that gets the plans, apparently he had spent time with the guy that designed the Death Star, learning about how horrible the Empire was, and that's what got him to turn sides. It's everyday people doing extraordinary things for the cause, if you will. That for me was important, instead of showing Chewbacca, who's like 1,000,000 feet tall, and all the space wizards.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about Andor again, the same goes for A New Hope. And there's not debate about how bad the Empire is. The debate is about what the right tactics are. Is it time? Is there still time to the debate that keeps recurring? Is there time where we can still organize rebellion within the system, or do we need to flee and join this rebel alliance? That's the debate, which lots of characters have, and some make kind of the wrong decision. But the thrust of the whole thing is, as I say, that the time to act is behind you. Actually, it's now. It's now. We're going. You know, and yeah, I don't think so. And that has a diverse range of characters. It's not. This is something I talk about more in the book as well. It's not really. It's not really about a mass public revolting, though. It's about a revolutionary militia. It's not. There's some of this which is very clumsily handled in the Disney sequels. So in The Last Jedi, they kind of call on the rest of the galaxy to come help them, and they don't. And then, spoiler alert, at the end of The Last Skywalker, is that the end of the Rise of Skywalker?
The Rise
The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. They do, for some reason, suddenly the whole of the rest of the galaxy, or a lot of it, does turn up to fight the Empire. So there's no kind of consistency or logic to that. But that isn't what the original trilogy is about. It's not a mass movement. It's a small group of people deciding now is the time for revolutionary action. It's and that must be by design by the originator, right? He wasn't. They're not sitting around talking about how can we educate the masses into revolutionary consciousness. There's no scene like that in A New Hope.
No, that is not part of this.
They're like, no, we've got to fucking go. It's now. Let's do it.
But that
also, you realize,
but does that feel like that's kind of that moment though? The 60s and 70s, it feels like people are like, all right, Nixon is the enemy.
Yeah.
The GOP is the enemy. We have to fight fascism. There's a war going on. There's a draft going on. Do you think the ending of the
machine,
draft,
but the machine is the enemy?
Yeah.
The machine has these figureheads, but the machine is unstoppable. You need to destroy the machine. Sorry to interrupt.
No, what role do you think the ending of the draft is when it comes to kind of giving everybody a way to kind of really settle into your bourgeois comforts, where when you're not really worried about going to fight, we don't really follow global affairs. I mean, if it wasn't for all the live streaming of a genocide in the Middle East, I don't know if people would care that much about what's going on.
Yeah, there was a nice YouTube video I saw. Someone made it was kind of half jokey, but it stuck with me. They took the scene from the last prequel movie, whatever that was called. But the one where Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader at the end. And,
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith, thank you. And it's the scene where he's marching up the steps of the Galactic Senate with some, well, they will become Stormtroopers to kind of seize the Senate or lock it down or whatever. And so it's on Coruscant. So there are all those thousands of flying cars in the background, you know. And this YouTube pointed out, do you think any of those people actually knew what was going on? Or maybe they heard it on the news later that night, you know, they were like, oh, there's been something happened in the Senate, but you know, whatever, what's on the other channel. which was probably the case, right? They weren't engaged with this, and Star Wars doesn't really focus on that. It's not about organizing a mass public, and I don't think that's just for dramatic reasons that would make kind of boring. You can dramatize anything if you're a good enough writer. It just wasn't his interest in doing that. It was about, you're saying there will always only be a, whether he's right or wrong, I think his assumption was there will always only be a small kind of revolutionary group who are really who see that the time to take action is now and are prepared to sacrifice everything for that. And that won't be a mass of people. Discuss, but I think that's what
I never thought of that. Yeah, there are.
That's the way he attacked the story.
That's an interesting way to attack the story. Last question. What role do you think popular culture plays in helping people imagine resistance? And can sci-fi still be radical, or has it been too sanitized by corporate interests?
I mean, sci-fi is inherently political in that sense. You're imagining a future. What I wrote about in my most recent book was how it's really odd in sci-fi terms that we are still referencing as our visions for the future movies that were made 30, 40 years ago. Because, and I talk about the reasons for that. I think, you still think of Blade Runner as the future that we are increasingly in, of huge corporate power and technology that enslaves us more than it frees us, and environmental destruction and so on, because that's still our relevant future. They were warning us about this 30, 40 years ago, and we didn't take those warnings seriously. So that's why I think sci-fi is still kind of stuck in that cyberpunk Blade Runner image. It's very unusual for a sci-fi kind of genre or image to stay relevant for 30, 40 years. I mean, that's never happened before, because technology keeps changing, and so sci-fi looks very dated very quickly. But this still stays relevant. People have a big debate about whether that kind of cyberpunk, the recurrence of that cyberpunk imagery, induces passivity and resignation, or whether it can still be revolutionary. And I can see how it induces passivity. And actually, what would be more interesting if corporations were willing to fund science fiction stories set in that world, is much more of a kind of solar punk future of possibilities. But actually, I don't. My feeling is that major media corporations, they'll make what sells. They're actually far less political in that sense. I don't believe in that. It doesn't feel right to me, that notion that they kind of censor particular stories. If something is popular, they'll sell it.
Squid Games.
They'll make things. Yeah, absolutely.
Parasite.
Yeah, absolutely. You have all this in various ways, anti-corporate or anti-capitalist media. They're quite happy to make that if it makes money. They're corporations. They don't think it's going to come back on them, and probably with good reason, right? So the villains in, I haven't seen the latest Superman film, whatever, but it's Lex Luthor again, and he's a tech bro, right? It's Elon Musk, because it sells. They don't think actually people are gonna take that too seriously, but they realize that resonates with people because it reflects our world.
That's interesting. that Elon Musk is supposed to be the big bad, or an Elon Musk like character. Because I don't know, I haven't been following the new Superman stuff, but I'm sure he loves that he's Lex Luthor. I don't know if that offends him in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a kind of mashup of a Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, whatever. These are
two people
this
that
is the
don't
weird. Yeah, okay, and yeah, and the weird thing is they are sci-fi fans, right? So when they watch Blade Runner, for them that is not a prescient warning about the future we're in. That's a they love that stuff. They name their products after it because because they like that because they're the ones who are going to be sitting at the top of the Tyrell Corporation. But they forget in the movie the android comes back and kills them.
I think they feel that they can just reprogram the android to have
They would change
like
it.
It's like RoboCop. Oh, we put the feature in you that you can't override us if you do something illegal.
Yeah, we'll tweak that. That's fine.
Yeah, that's how we're gonna handle it. Well, look, we've been talking for an hour. Let's go watch Star Wars. For those of you that are watching this right now, if you are a patron already, the link is already up for the watch party. If you would like to join us, patreon.com/bitterlakepresents. Sadly, if you're watching the show on Twitter, there is no link. But it's patreon.com/bitterlakepresents. That's how you find us. That's how you find the link to the watch party, so you can join Dr. Harris and I and everyone as we watch episode 4, A New Hope, aka the OG Star Wars. So Michael, I sent you that link. And
so I go on a different link now, do I?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. Harris. For all of you guys that are watching right now, YouTube pulled the show again. If you're listening to this later, YouTube pulled the show again. We need your help more than ever, because apparently talking about the revolutionary capacity of science fiction is far scarier than Hassan Piker. Remember that. Just kidding. Totally kidding. I don't want Hassan coming after me. He's a big dude. I've met him in real life. So thank you, guys, and I'll see you shortly in the watch party.